Hey you guys, so today I'm going to be sharing with you a list of books that I read, loved, but don't own for one reason or another. I made this list for myself so that when I go to like a half price books or just book shopping in general, I can remember to pick these books up if I see them, especially if I see them on sale or like used copies or anything like that, because I would love, love, love to add these books to my physical shelves moving forward. So the first book on my list is called Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn or Gillian Flynn. I still don't know. I read this years and years and years ago and absolutely fell in love with the author, with the book. It was so amazing. It's dark, it's sticky. I want to say it's like a murder mystery if I'm remembering right, but our main character is, I'm going to say like a news reporter who comes back to town because some shit's going down, and she's like sort of investigating as she's kind of like reacclimating with like her life in that really small town down south. It's set in the summer, so it's really hot and sticky. It would honestly be a great read for right now. And I did actually own a copy of this book, and then I let somebody borrow it and I never got it back. So yeah, I would love to own a new copy of it. So this next book is called Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. I read this via library book a couple of years ago. Absolutely loved it. I think I'm going to say it for every single book on this list today. But it is a queer, I don't really want to call it a romance. I just remember being so like, as I was reading it, and it was fun because my cousin who I'm really close to read it at the same time, and so we got to like have little chit chats about it. But it was so funny because she said she listened to the audiobook while she was like working from home, like clicking around, and I was like, oh my god, I could not focus if I was listening to this book and trying to do anything else, honestly. But I want to say our main character is this lady who somehow gets involved in this other couple's like relationship. I don't remember if they're like dating or they like work together or something like that. Very, very spicy though, so definitely consider that before you pick this up. But I do remember really liking it. I also love the cover, and yeah, I would love to own a copy. This next book I actually got an ARC of last year, and I finished it like last fall or winter. It's called Real Americans by Rachel Khong. I read Goodbye Vitamin by her a few years ago now. Loved it. Got the ARC for Real Americans. Loves it as well. We're following, I want to say like a few main characters, so it's basically like this girl and then this boy and then an older lady, and I don't want to tell you exactly how everybody's story is interconnected because if you haven't read it yet, I don't want to like spoil anything or like ruin it. But it's basically just about like family dynamics, the American immigrant experience, and honestly just how some very, very small decisions end up really, really impacting your life and then everyone's life after you. And I loved every minute of it, and I also love the cover so much. This next book I got as a library book last winter. It's called Couplets by Meg Milner. It's queer. It's about this girl's first go at like a queer relationship, and it's honestly just about how she's obsessed with love and she's a romantic at heart, and she's just always trying to chase that feeling and that like desire to love and be loved the same way in return. And I feel like all romantics can probably relate to that. It's told in like little vignettes and it's beautiful. I loved it. Again, love the cover too. It's very cute. This next one I'm kind of on the fence about. So like it's one of those like if I see it, great. I don't know if I'm fully into the idea of like seeking it out though. If I see it though, I do think I would buy it. It's called The Adult by Bronwyn Fisher. I got this as a library book. It was either last summer or 2 summers ago now. And it's also a queer book about this girl who, I want to say she's in college and she ends up sleeping with one of her professors or a club leader who's a teacher of some kind, something like that. And I want to say the teacher might be married. Something like that. But I did really like it. But like I said, I don't think I'm like dying to have it, but I would buy it if I saw it out. This next one I have wanted for so long. I got it as a library book. It's called You Never Get It Back by Cara Blue Adams. I feel like it was one of the first-ish books I reviewed on my Bookstagram a couple of years ago. It's a collection of short stories, but this collection of short stories is a little different than a lot of others I have read in the past, and it is because we are following the same main character throughout her life. So her growing up, all her relationships with her partners, her family. I want to say her job is in academia somehow, and it follows like that narrative. It's like about grief, longing, just finding your place in the world. And I remember just loving it so, so, so much. I think there was specifically a short story about like her dog or like her family pet or something like that. And I remember it like really hitting close to home, and I could definitely see myself rereading this book. I would absolutely love to own a copy of You Never Get It Back by Cara Blue Adams. This next one is actually nonfiction, and it's called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. So I actually own a copy of this. I got it when I used to work at the bookstore when I was in college. It's basically about how like, I want to say it's like different drugs, but like I'm going to say a lot of like hallucinogenics and stuff like that can affect people's like depression, anxiety in a positive way. And I thought it was really cool because it was very, very science-based, while at the same time our author was doing their own kind of research. And so he would like meet with different doctors, I want to say like shamans of some kind, different like spiritual leaders, and do these drugs in a very, very guided, protected way so that his experiences were safe. And I think so he could actually like experience things without feeling scared, because obviously if you're doing drugs like this, I assume you need to make sure that like everything is what the person you're getting from is saying it is, and everything is like as safe as it can be. And I loved this book, and I let a friend borrow it, never got it back, but it's okay. But yeah, I just thought it was so, so, so interesting and cool just like read his experiences and all the science behind like why he was saying what he was saying. And I want to say when I did read this in college, I was in a medical botany class, and so we had a whole section on this kind of thing. So I just feel like especially at the time that I picked this up, it was just like a big part of like what I was learning about. And so I thought it was really, really interesting, and I would love to own another copy. This next one, I feel like is another one kind of like the adult where if I see it, I get it. I don't know how much I'm going to seek it out, but it's called Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. I read a library copy of this a couple years ago. Really, really liked it. Toxic relationships, friendships, crazy friendships. I don't remember too much about it, but I do remember really liking it, and I want to pick up her new book called Blue Sisters. And yeah, so it's one of those where it's like I liked it enough where I remember having good feelings around it, but I also don't remember like every little thing that happened in the book. So I would love to own it, and I feel like that could be one I could see myself rereading, because it's like I know I liked it and I enjoyed my time, but I don't really remember everything that happened. So I feel like those books would be a little bit more fun to reread than ones that you remember every single thing that happened in the book. Oh my gosh, this next one I think was probably my top book of last year, and I was shocked by it. And I got it from the library because, not that I thought I wouldn't like it, I just didn't really have a whole lot of thoughts going into it, like at all, and I ended up loving it. I feel like I highlighted so many lines in this book. It is so, so, so queer and just so freaking good. So our main character, they're working at this, I want to say it's like an all-girl boarding school. So I want to say all the students are in like high school or high school age, but they're in like a different country. Falls in love with and starts an affair with the headmaster. I don't know if that's the correct word. The principal, the headmaster's wife. And they hang out all the time. They garden together. They go to the creeks. They go to the ponds. It is hot out. It's sticky. It's sexy. It is such beautiful writing, and the way that they can describe certain like feelings and thoughts and actions just like really, really like took over my brain. And I still think about that book like honestly quite often. It was just like beautiful, and I just remember loving it, and I loved reading it at like the end of summer, because in the book it was very like hot, sticky, messy, gross, sexy, but we're also like still during the school year. So I feel like I read it at like the end of August, like early September, and it was like the perfect time to read it. And yeah, I feel like that is one of my top books that I want on this list, and I could definitely see myself rereading it. Just, yeah, I don't know, I want one. I want a copy. This next one, I feel like, again, is kind of like Cleopatra and Frankenstein and the adult, where like if I see it, great. If I don't, I feel like it'll be on this list forever then. But it's called Groundskeeping by Lee Cole. I picked this up like a couple years ago now, set in Appalachia at this small university. It's kind of a romance, but our main character is this guy who comes from a very, very conservative family. He is this groundskeeper at this school, and he starts hanging out with this girl who's very, very liberal, privileged, comes from a lot of money, has a lot of experiences, and I feel like it's just them both judging each other while also falling in love with each other. But sometimes I feel like their differences are keeping them a little bit too separate. And yeah, I really, really liked it. This next one I also got from the library. It's called Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. I don't know if I'm saying her last name right. And I actually just finished this book last weekend, and it was so freaking beautiful. First of all, love the cover. Second of all, it is queer. It's set in Ireland. These two girls are falling head over heels in love with each other in high school. I want to say they're like 17 or 18 years old. So it's like right before college. And just like the dramatics of like your first love and feeling like nothing will ever compare. It's very black and white feelings and so dramatic. Like that's the word that I'm going to use, but also like very, very relatable. Like I remember feeling like this in high school, and honestly, I feel like you feel so hard for someone else, especially when you feel like it's like the first person who's ever loved or seen you. But then I feel like relationships like that, it's kind of like once you take a step back and you're like a little older and stuff, you're kind of like, are you actually in love with that person, or are you in love with, you know, the way they made you feel about yourself? Or was it like the first time that anyone has ever made you feel certain ways, or just like stuff like that? But I remember feeling so dramatic like that and like crying all the time. Like, and I'm specifically thinking of like, I would say like my first like actual relationship in high school. We dated for months, not even a whole year, months. I remember sobbing at school, sobbing at home, not leaving my house except to go to school. And I just remember just how dramatic the ending of that relationship was. Like it felt like the world was ending and I was never going to be loved or wanted again. And I feel like now that I'm like, 10 years out of that, I'm like, I don't even know how much I really knew him. I feel like it was just, I didn't like myself enough. And so then when I had somebody almost like confirm those feelings to me by like breaking up with me, it was like the hardest thing ever. And I don't think I've ever had a relationship wreck me like that. And I think it just shows that when you're that young, not that you don't know what's going on or you don't like have confidence, but like I don't know. I just remember everything feels so serious, even when it's not, But anyway, so yes, I would love Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. It was so freaking good. This next one is called Upstream by Mary Oliver. It's an essay collection all set in like nature, about nature. I read this 2 winters ago now. I got a library copy on a Kindle. Fell in love with Mary Oliver. I want to read more of her poems, and if she has any more essay collections, I would love to read those too. She just truly encapsulates like nature, and I feel like how nature can just really, really be really good metaphors for like human experiences. And yeah, I loved it so, so much. This second one, I don't have a ton to say about like what it's about. I read it a few years ago, I think. Got it from the library. It's called No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. I freaking love the cover. I remember it being very, very online, very internet heavy. I remember it being kind of split into like 1 or 2 or like 2 or 3 different stories. And I remember the first part, I want to say, I think one of the sections is very like tweet heavy, like almost like every little thing you're reading is like a tweet. And then the second book is very, very sad and like family focused, if I'm remembering correctly. But another reason why I do want to pick this up is because it is one of my book club's pick for the next like month or two. I forget which month. And so yeah, I would love to own my own copy so I can write, highlight, notate in the book. So this last one I'm going to tell you about is called Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. I also got this from the library. This one was so fun because it was so obsessive and dramatic and crazy. And I want to say this lady falls in love with, I don't know if it was one of her students or just this guy at the college she works at. Like, I don't fully remember, but she was obsessed with him and she goes to crazy lengths to just get him to notice her, honestly. So I loved all of these books. I would love to own a copy of every single one of them. I do think I will own them eventually. I'll probably buy them eventually. But yeah, I would love to find them used or at a discount price of some kind. So yeah, but thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.